leadership. Think about it. The other team who went on quarterfinal of the Champions League are talking about visiting Rwanda. Think about the economic impact. If one didn't think that sports can be a medium to do the marketing for your country, this is a good demonstration of that impact. Secondly, we have youth, and any of us, his name is more known than me in Africa, because he's in sport. He was owner of, he was a CEO of the Toronto. He took them to the playoff, and now he's the boss of the Dallas. So any leader of sports is much known, and every politician dreams actually to be as known as any star in their country. Sadio Mane in my country is certainly more known than a lot of people around. And it's important because sports just creates something in people that is special. Myself, if I'm here today, standing here, is because largely of sports. I've learned resilience, I learned discipline, I learned principles, I learned values. If I was able to have it, I would have stopped doing things which were complicated in my life, and I would have lost the focus that I needed to have it. So sports for me means something more than just watching people in a thing. Secondly, sports, you can do it by having also, you can be a professional athlete, but you can also a professional. I myself was able to represent my country in the national team, and I'm still doing this job, and I'm where I am, and I know.
But you've got to tell people what it was. It was karate. Did you guys know that?
No,
National champion in karate?
No, but that's
round of applause.
I was as fit as my son. It was changed. But I want to say that all these small stories, that it means that today with sports you can change your society, you can change economy. So think about the number of people gravitating around sports, people who are selling the stadium, people who are transporting the stadium, people who are working around the stadium, people who are training for it. It has an impact, a huge impact. But let me start by two things that I need to start with my most important messages. Management of sports and sports facility is not the job of the government. It's the job of the private sector. So when you have facilities which are built by the private sector or the public sector, they need to be given to the private sector to manage. That's what Rwanda is doing. Secondly, we need to invest to make sure that the financing is ensured to that. That, Masai, don't worry, we are working on that. We are providing resources to do that. Continue on the execution, and I think that now there is awareness in the ecosystem to finance you. And I know a lot of people, when they see institutions like IFC, which has been investing in infrastructure, in all these things, putting their money in supporting sports, I think they can be convinced that they can make a lot of money in sport industry.
Brilliant. Zaria Court. Who's been to Zaria Court on this trip? How many of you? The rest of you, you've missed out. Because honestly, I went and I checked it out, and it's unbelievable, Masai, what you've been able to bring to the table. Round of applause, please, because when you visit, you'll understand. I mean, just an incredible vision coming to fruition. The last time you and I spoke, we were talking about, you needing patient capital because you want to scale this and you really want to make it big. How do you feel now?
There's plenty of work to be done, but I'm so appreciative of the opportunity that we've been given. And I must say, the real opportunity and the vision has come from President Kagame. Yes, because for Rwanda to do what they've done here and set the tone, the template of what should be done on the continent, for him to believe in sports. Yes, from that moment when I first met him and then invited him to the All-Star game in Toronto, the shift in which he moved, like to bring this whole vision of a sports city and more, I think I'm appreciative of this. I'm appreciative of all the support, from all the stakeholders that you push something, you have insight. When I saw what we do in the States, I see those arenas, and I want to say to you guys, like there is a big difference between the arenas and the stadiums. Yeah, the stadiums are iconic, right? They're big, a little bit more difficult to fill. The arenas are the money makers. Yes, and that's the one that provides what we are talking about. Then the entertainment and sports districts you build around that is really, really huge. So I think it's kudos to everybody in the industry here, that have really supported us pushing sports. We cannot continue to see these artists, we cannot continue to see the Basketball Africa League, we cannot continue to see talented comedians, talented chefs, talented creatives on this continent who are at the highest level. They are at the highest level of performance. We cannot continue to see them perform, and they cannot perform in their own continent.
And you need to enable that. And, honestly, when anyone that knows your journey and just how you've been such a big advocate of growing the game and growing sports on the continent, and then just taking it one step further and focusing on infrastructure, it brings, big players like the IFC to the table. Was it difficult to break through? And how are investors viewing your dream?
In Africa, we don't see sports as a business. We see sports as
nice to have.
Nice to have. We see it as recreation, and we see it as competition. When they say Africa, get ready for AFCON, or get ready for Olympics, or get ready for the World Cup, we are number one. We're there. Yes, and we have the team and the talent. But to actually see what we should be doing for youth, what we should be doing for young women, what we should be doing for business on this continent, and actually providing what I think economic value brings to us through sports, we don't actually see it. So I think, Eleni, your question is, I think many of the people understand. Marta played sports. A lot of people here understand. The key stakeholders, which comes from government, and I come back to President Kagame, who had a site in the middle of the city, and he knew that he should develop that site. We go to every country in Africa, we have these old sports complexes that were built 50 years ago, and politicians just stare on them and stand on them and don't want their development. Why is that? Every country in Africa has it, right in the middle of the city. They are dejected, they are stressed, and they don't want anybody to come and touch them. Why? Yes, why? We have to revisit this. Yeah, if not, we'll all pass, we'll all go, and those things still remain the same. They have remained the same for 40 years. And we are now deciding, we are now saying we want to end this, but we're not doing it in a combative way. We want to work with governments. We want to talk about them. We just did a lease with President Ruto to build in Kenya. We're talking about it in Nigeria with President Tinubu. We're talking about it in Addis. We're talking about this now, and I think people are becoming more educated, and I think that's our jobs from a finance standpoint, from a sports standpoint, from entertainment standpoint. We have to educate people more on the value of sports as a business.
So here's my question. When Masai came to you with this plan, how much convincing, Masai, did you have to do?
By the way, it was with an iPad. We sat down how many years ago, and I'm telling you, he was so pumped up, but I'll let you go.
You form a government, so you need to explain yourself as well,
yes,
right?
We met at the Toronto game. At that time, he has taken as a Toronto to the playoff for the first time.
You keep saying playoff, championship, man.
Yeah, but I don't want you to brag too much. So we met at the game, and it was just a wonderful conversation. And we took it actually and continued it in Toronto at the All-Star. So I told him, okay, we talk about it now, we need to change the situation. He brought his iPad, it's not a joke. And he said, Mokhtar, this is what I want to tell you. Don't ask me about numbers, let's talk about vision. So we spent time discussing it, and I just bought into it. I just bought into it, and my immediate objective was to find a good vehicle to be able to support him.
You bought into it, but did your team buy into it? How much convincing did you have to do within the bureaucracy of the IFC to get others on board?
We got there, let's put it that way. No, I mean, it's true that when you have colleagues who are used to build a big infrastructure and this type of thoughts, and we are not used to assess the risk, this type of risk, they always legitimately, for good reason, ask themselves questions about what is the rate of return, what is the flow, cash flow, etc. So it was a matter of explaining to them, and we did three things. I say I will take more risk on this investment. So even if the risk is higher than we would take in a normal infrastructure project, I'm ready to take it. And I take full responsibility for it. The second thing we said, I said, start reading a little bit about the economy of sport. So Masa educated me on something. We were in Toronto and we had the stadium. He said, look at the title of the name of this arena. And I said, okay, I read it and I say, it's a big company, why are you telling me that? He said, do you know how much they're paying to have their name here? And when he gave me that number, I say, we are just scratching the surface. Because when you go in Africa, people don't monetize that. Give them the number, Masai, how you told me it was.
When I was in Toronto, we were lucky that the naming rights deal expired during my tenure. And it used to be called the Air Canada Centre, for some of you that know, and it changed to Scotiabank Arena. I think we had just won the championship on the cusp of it. 800 million for 10 years.
Wow.
Yes, 800 million for 10 years. And I want to commend your team, my partners. I think Andrew Feinstein and Kyle are here, but your team, Ethiopia's, all these guys, Ken, everybody has
Henrik?
Yes. Everybody has done an incredible job, like really digging into this vision. And one of the reasons I mentioned this is we also own QA Solutions that manages the arenas. And all these properties and arenas actually need managing. In Africa, we have to determine who comes and plays, concerts, and all those things. We program some of the things in Africa that work on our continent. And that's how you get utilization to the highest level with facilities that are in the middle. Sports is not a privileged thing. Concerts are not privileged things to go to. Yes, everywhere you go to these arenas, everybody goes to these things. It doesn't matter your class. You buy your tickets, you find the tickets that you can get, and you go to these games.
But, Masa, I want to say something that people don't know because they were too young for it. I saw Mike at the Jackson 5 in Senegal. Okay? Today, which young African had a chance to see Michael Jackson during his lifetime in Africa?
You saw Michael Jackson live?
No, I saw the Jackson 5 live when I was a kid in Dakar. They were touring Africa. Oh. I saw James Brown in Senegal. He was touring Africa. So just to tell you that, guys, we haven't been big progress. We've been backward. Because at that time, James Brown went to Africa and toured. The Jackson 5 visited countries in Africa. So when I say to the youngster today that, they look at me and say, no, you they cannot imagine. So we haven't actually, we thought that it's a new question, but it happened in the past. We're just catching up with what happened in the past. And at that time, it's because the business was not as demanding in terms of insurance, in terms of infrastructure. Those people were ready to tour in stadium without having the insurance. The world has evolved as demand infrastructures are different. We are just catching up. And I can tell you, when you talk to Yusundu and Aussies during the summer, they go in Europe because they cannot travel to Kenya, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and have one, two where they make money. They would have loved to do it. Today, actually, when these artists travel, what they do? In Francophone Africa, they go to the French Cultural Center, they go to one stadium here, they have one trip here and come back. So what we're talking is building an ecosystem.
And when they come here, Maktar, they've come here. With the BK Arena, they have come here. Kendrick Lamar, John Legend, Tyler, Davido, Tiwa, Diamond, all these people have come and played here. Yes, they've played in Kigali. And we're proud of that. We're really proud that they have come and played here. But the key to all of this being a strong economic driver for the continent and for us to monetize at the highest level, there has to be a circle, some way, somehow. When I did my first festival in 2023, Drake wanted to come. But he wanted the ability to come here, then go to Kenya, and go to Nigeria, and go to Senegal or Accra. Well, along the way, there are some of these countries that don't have arenas. How about when they have arenas? Yes, Chris Brown came and sold out how many things in South Africa, but couldn't come here. I think we really need to pay attention to what has been done here, because it's a real template that we just want to take and put it in Kenya, put it in Nigeria, put it in Accra, put it in Abidjan, put it in Johannesburg. Yes, I said it, put it in Johannesburg. Yes, and we will move in Africa.
I visited your team, and it almost made me want to get remarried, because the way that they were, Tamara, you're laughing, were you? Because they were saying, no, here are weddings, we can do this, we can do that, we can do conferences here, this section, they're like, we sweat the assets. We just sweat the assets, we just work it. And it was really interesting because it's multi-use, right? I mean, there's so much you can do with these. So
this gentleman we were talking, and I said, multi-use in Senegal. He told me, in Africa, he told me, you know, my number one customer will be, I said, which one? He says, the preachers. I said, what? He said, every Sunday, the preachers and the church have a lot of money. They be filling an arena every Sunday. So even I can make my business just by renting the arena to the preachers every Sunday. So if you have the preachers, you have the basketball league that our brother Amadou Gallo is leading. The day after, you have a business conference that day. That you're using. The day after, you have another game there. You are running the business, but that the government cannot do it. I want to insist on it very seriously.
Yes.
The government doesn't have the capacity of organizing a tour for Drake, for Davido, to bring them. They don't have the connections. They don't have their job, and they should not be their job. They cannot organize BAL. BAL is a job of Amadou Gallo. If you want to do, so we need to really, there are two things that we need to do. Is the existing facilities owned by government should be brought in management in the end of the private sector. And we need to build a new infrastructure built and owned by the private sector and managed by the private sector. The money will not be the problem. We will be able to mobilize resources to support Maasai. We are supporting also other investors in that space. This is not the problem. The problem is just what he said, that government realize that they are sitting on assets that they are not monetizing. You know, a big piece of land sitting in some of the cities is a lot of money that can be monetized. And understand that maybe we will not have $800 million to name an arena in Africa, but maybe $200 million. But $200 million is already a lot of money if you have it over 10 years to sustain that infrastructure.
Carl, did you hear that? That's the renegotiations for Bank of Kigali. BK Arena is incredible. And what they've done, I think the support that Bank of Kigali has brought. Yeah, but there's going to be competition. I bet you when this is built, and grow. And when I say build, when it continues to grow and the business that it brings. But Eleni, what you are talking about, the ecosystem of sports, what really came to our minds with Zaria is people need sports bars, they need restaurants. Before they go eat, they want to buy jerseys, right? They would need to stay in hotels.
Yeah.
All those things contribute to the ecosystem of sports. Yes, when they go watch the games or the concerts or whatever they went to do in the arena, they're going to come back, going to drink a beer, they're going to spend money. You have to get that money spent in that ecosystem while they're there.
And you want to walk easily to the arena or the stadium without any issues.
Yes, you want to get in and out, and this is how Madison Square Garden works. This is how Scotiabank Arena works. This is how money is this is how these assets are really monetized on that side of the world.
Yeah.
But I think that to supplement, we talk a lot about infrastructure and so forth, but I want to talk about something else in that space, is education.
Yes.
I think, just to think about it, with the richness that we have in culture and music in Africa, besides South Africa, I'm not sure that we have more than 2 or 3 top schools of music in Africa. It's not. So what does it mean? It means that the creativity that we have of our musician, our artist, will be captured by someone else. So we need to invest in it. Secondly, we are the best athlete in the world. Okay? Runners, things. There is not a decent physical therapy institute in Africa at the level that he has when he is managing his team in Dallas. So we need to start creating that ecosystem all around. Education, we need to bring sports medicine. We need to have a department of sports business. One of the business schools, we need to specialize in this area to help with the economic analysis of the economic impact of sports in countries and opportunities. If you see IFC putting their money in it, believe me, it's safe to put the money in that business.
Thank you for that endorsement.
You can speak to Masai and Makta about investment.
Andrew.
Andrew, sorry. Because you're really busy now. You know, and congratulations on the Dallas Mavericks.
Thank you.
How is that going?
It's going.
It's going? It's going?
No,
Okay.
it's really good. I need to say this. I really need to say this. I'm so proud and so happy and so honored to be given another opportunity in the NBA with an incredible team like the Dallas Mavericks. So we're going to just have to change red to blue now on the continent and get blue all over the continent, starting with this room.
So funny story, I interviewed Masai in New York, and you were at the Toronto Raptors, and you said to me, we're going to win.
Yes.
And you said it, and it happened, right?
Yes.
And it actually happened. So what is your plan in terms of, you know, I think bringing the lessons from what you learned there to the continent, but also the lessons from the continent to your experience there and to people there watching on, because there's so much talent.
Is winning. Yes, we have to win. We have to win in Africa, and we can't have excuses anymore. We make too many excuses. We talk, and now we have to walk. And I'm telling you, it's the time to do it now. Yes, because we have the talent. And when I talk about talent, I'm not just talking about sports. I'm talking about all of you, everybody. Yes, especially women. Yes, we have incredible talent on this continent, and we have to move. We have to make it happen. Whether it's people here, whether it's Africans in diaspora, we really do. We can't talk. Let's all put our hands. We have to work better together. Yes, we see every other culture, every other people do it. Why can't we do it in Africa? And we have everything. The best financiers, the best pilots, the best engineers, the best doctors, the best athletes, the best in the world. Yes, I will say it every day. We are the best. Yes, now we have to make Africa the best.
And there's a lot of elite African athletes that have gone to the Premier League and other top leagues as well.
Yes.
I mean, that's a reality.
No, they're playing everywhere. At the top of every league, whether every premiership. I'm not going to say what I'm going to say about the French national team that was all African, but I'll say it. Yes, I will say it. No, but we are everywhere. We are everywhere. Even in the NBA, players that are born in the States that are Africans. Yes, the movement is, look at our artists. Yeah, how many of them can you name? Now, they're selling out Madison Square Garden, they're selling out Scotiabank, they're selling out crypto, and they have nowhere else to sell out except Kigali Arena. It's not possible. Yeah, it's not possible. We, all of us here, yes, CEOs of all these companies, we have to make it possible now, because I'm telling you, it is a business, and it's a business we have to grow, and it's not necessarily just a sports business. It's a business for everybody.
You leave me speechless each time.
There is something you didn't talk about, and maybe you might.
We've got to wrap up, so just
yeah. But I think that's something that you will like. So let me. You didn't talk about WNBA and the women basketball.
Yes.
And I think that is important, because I think that's another area of growth for the continent. The women sports in sports like soccer, like basketball, I think will be another frontier where we could also place the continent to be playing an important role. What do you think about it?
Yes, blessed again that I just invested in the WNBA team in Toronto. What a great movement, what a great thing for young women everywhere in the world to see how these women are shining and are growing. But our young women here too, with Giants of Africa, same thing. We do same boys, same girls. 50 boys, 50 girls. They get the same shoes, they get the same court time. I think in Africa, we know the women are smarter than us. Let's give them more opportunity. Yes, let's be big. Yeah, let's.
On that note,
yes, let's do it.
There's nothing more to say now, because I think you've said it. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Masayo Ujiri and Maktar Job. Thank you so much. Thank you. Stay on stage with me for a sec. Who's under? Can you hear me? Who's under 40 and has a PhD? Who's under 40 years old and has a PhD? Under 40 years old and has a PhD? One person? Just one? You guys are neither under 40 nor PhD. You can leave. And one person. How many of you? Just one, two, three. Oh, there's a few of you. Woo! Stand up, stand up, stand up. Stand up. Okay, the reason I say this is because we have a fantastic new award, and it's called the African Next Gen Economic Prize. It's a collaboration with Jeune Afrique and the Africa Report, and partnership with the African Development Bank. It was launched in 2025, and it aims to identify a new generation of superheroes. They're calling it intellectuals. I'm just saying it's superheroes. And interestingly, the applicants came from various countries, 14 countries, and there were 70 candidates that entered the competition. We'll find out why and the premise of this. For that, I'm going to call up Aurélie Mbida, business editor, Jeune Afrique, and Nicholas Norbrook, managing editor of the Africa Report, to come on stage so we can give you a bit more insight. They selected two finalists, Ablam Estelle Apeti, lecturer at Paris Nanterre University, and Abdoulaye Ndiaye, assistant professor of economics at New York University. It's good to have you with us. What a fantastic, it's superhero. It's a superhero award, correct?
I love that. It's a superhero award.
It is.
Exactly.
Who's got a PhD that's under 40? Anyway. So what's the premise of the award, Nicholas?
Well, about 100 years ago, when I was a young journalist, I interviewed Dr. Donald Kaberuka, who had just started as president of the African Development Bank. And he was in the process of setting up a chief economist role at the African Development Bank. And so I obviously asked him, why now? Why have you not had one before? And he said, well, we used to just take whatever they said in Washington and apply it at the African Development Bank. And that's not right. We can't just import mistakes from abroad. Let us make our own mistakes. Let us grow. Let us have our own economists. And so this award is just one small part of that. We're trying to reward those superheroes, as you say, who can help catalyze ideas and growth on the continent.
Okay, I want you to give me a sense. I mean, when we look at how, and to Nicholas's point, when, economic policy is very much influenced and shaped by the West, are we seeing a shift on the ground? And how do you believe this award will help change things?
Ce prix va changer les choses. On a
This prize will change. I think we have a head of economists, and now we have the African Bank of Development for a very long time. And the topic is not only knowing about if we have African economies, but to know if we have ideas that are produced here in Africa with the African standards that not lays only on the adaptations. But we still have a lot of politics, African public policies that are on the different, that are relay on several models out of Africa that know their reality. And it's a principle that we need to correct. And if we need to give a message, we need to talk about ideas. African economic thoughts are needed. And let me tell you that we were impressed with the team of Jeune Afrique team. On the quality of the finalists, they were very concrete. They were talking about debt, work, regional integrations, and we have a very interesting surprise tonight. So if this prize can change something, it won't change the face of the continent, but it will bring something. Every year, a new generation of African economists will rise.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause as we wait. A bit of, excitement.
I've always wanted to do this. So for his research identifying the institutional and market constraints that limit the capacity of African states to provide insurance to households, mobilize domestic resources, and preserve macro-financial stability, the winner of the inaugural Africa Next Gen Economist Prize is Abdoulaye Ndiaye. Welcome to the stage.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Okay, a few words from you. Take your award. Stand on the side. Guys, a bit more excitement. I mean, this man has achieved the unachievable.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to receive this award. Just selected by a jury of economists from Africa who found that my contributions are useful to Africa, and I hope this will create a generation of economists from Africa working on important questions on African economies. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Okay, don't give the microphone away. You've been at this conference and you've been hearing about scaling up or failing, and you're hearing about, shared ownership. Given the work that you've done and some of the conversations that you've heard, what's your take on what to do next? A message to the private sector.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Eleni, and thank you to President Kagame for hosting us in this great, beautiful country and city. Over the last 2 days, I've heard a lot of extraordinary operators here talking about scaling capital, talking about scaling companies, and talking about scaling impact. And I think we need all of that. And the role of economists is to think of these. I think for scale in Africa, scale is definitely needed. We need first to think of how to allocate capital efficiently, to allocate the patient capital in the right ideas. So to reduce the misallocation of capital, that's how we scale capital. We need to be obsessed with productivity. And obsessing with productivity, that's what lowers the marginal cost of firms. And that's what makes them expand and scale. That's how we scale companies. And finally, we need to think of impact, how to scale impact, because at the end of the day, we scale when there is demand for our goods and services. And those are the three things that we need. And the role of economists is to really ask these questions, and like I already say, find the right frameworks, African frameworks to answer these questions, and we are doing this. And we hope that this will continue in the future.
So it was fantastic to hear you, and I wish you all the best. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Truly. Thank you so much, Nicholas and Aurélie. Fantastic. So that's the very first award we've given out, and so good to be able to share it with all of you in the audience. All right, it's time for our very last session, and we're going to be talking about some of the key outcomes for the private sector. I'd like to welcome on stage Asha Leke, Senior Partner and Chairman of McKinsey & Company, Africa. we can't really move forward if we do not know the data, if we don't know how companies are doing, if we don't understand sort of the ins and outs of what's going to help us go forward. So Acha, I know you've got the data. You've been collating it with your team. Looking forward to hearing about it. Round of applause for Acha, everybody.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Perfect. Thanks, Eleni, and thanks for not forgetting me this time, like you did last year in Abidjan. As we close, we thought we would share some of the data we have. So as you know, some of you know, we talk about scaling and scaling businesses. And as McKinsey, we've actually been tracking the number of billion-dollar businesses in Africa over the last decade. And this is literally hot off the press. We've just been doing this over the last few weeks, and I'll explain how we could do it this quickly. But hot off the press, I thought it will be important for us to know where we're starting from so that next year when we come, we can realize how much have we scaled. Somebody talked about how are we going to get the next 20, whether it's the Dangotes or the Samad or the Tony Illumilus of the world. We have to figure out where we're starting. And so we start from the premise of why large companies are important. Hopefully I don't need to convince anybody here about this. SMEs are incredibly important. They contribute the bulk of jobs in Africa. But large companies matter disproportionately to many of our economies. When it comes to growth, to innovation, to exports, to taxes, by the way, most of it is produced by large companies. In most of our countries, and we did this analysis, there are millions of companies, but the top 100 companies contribute more than 50 to 60% of all tax revenues in each of our countries. It's hugely important. They then serve the SME ecosystem, this ecosystem that actually feeds into the value chain, and so they provide the opportunity for these SMEs to grow. So that's why they're important. So some of you may have seen this data. We started in 2016, and in 2016 we have found about $400 billion businesses, so we call them African champions, whether it's a private sector business, it's a multinational business, it's a state-owned enterprise, businesses that make $1 billion or more of revenue in Africa. 400, and the combined revenue is about $1.2 trillion. We updated it in 2022. There, with everything we had gone through, the number went down to 350 roughly, with a revenue of $1.1 billion. How many people think the number has gone up this year, and how many people think it has gone up? Let me start there. How many people think it's gone down? Oh wow, this is an optimistic crowd. All right. Well done. The number is actually gone up, but slightly. We found about 365. But what's impressive is the revenue. Revenues have shot up significantly, right? So what you're finding is African businesses are scaling, right? We're not getting as many, but they're scaling much faster. And we'll come back to that. Now, we break, so there are about, and the 365, this side breaks down. There are about 30 companies in Africa that make $10 billion or more of revenue, about 30. And there are about 335 that make about 1 billion to 10 billion, right? Again, we'll not be able to put all the logos here, but that's the list of companies. What's interesting is when you look at the 10 billion or above, the first time we did it, we actually found 13 companies that were at 10 billion or above at $261 million of revenue. The second time we found 20, right, at 350, and now we found 30, right? And the bottom line is the average size of these businesses on average, right? So on average, like you can see, the average large business had revenues of 2.9 million, and it's grown to 4, right? And so on average, we're seeing we're seeing a scale up in the number of businesses with a much bigger scale up in the revenues. Now, how does this compare? As you may remember, this was data from the last time we did it. About 40%, the last time we did it, about 40% of the businesses were based in South Africa. And South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, and Nigeria accounted for about 2/3. That is still about rough. So we're seeing a lot more business. We're seeing more businesses in every of our large markets. So South Africa has gone to 153. You can see the numbers here. So all of our large markets have been able to generate more billion-dollar businesses, which is great. South Africa is still about 42%, and then the top 4 still account for about 70%. What's interesting then is the revenue, because we said, the number has scaled up some, but the revenue has gone up significantly. And it's been really, really driven by the commodities, right? So you look at the revenues, oil, those two sectors alone account for 70% of all of the revenue growth we've experienced with the billion-dollar businesses. And there are only 3 sectors where revenue has actually contracted. Retail and consumer goods, we know what's happened to the average African consumer in the last few years. So retail and consumer goods has contracted a bit. But the oil and gas and mining, the commodity-related sectors account for most of the growth. Then we also usually think about how many of these businesses are multinationals, how many businesses are private African companies, how many are state-owned enterprise. Multinationals used to be a third of the businesses, their share. Last time we did it, it's gone down to about 28%. And the African private sector companies, so we have the equity banks here, we have the Arises of the world, we have Samad and Bua and those kind of companies, the Dangotes and the MTNs. That's about 55% of the businesses, and that used to be 50%. So we're seeing more and more of these businesses actually, businesses that are homegrown in Africa and are scaling up across the continent. And so just quickly in summary, for you to remember, we are home now to about 365 business champions. Cumulative revenue has gone up significantly, $1.5 trillion. They've grown modestly in number, but they've grown significantly in scale, which has been great, driven by commodity-led sectors. The good news is we're seeing more and more of these African champions in most of our major economies. The landscape, as I said, about 55% local corporates and about 28% multinationals. And the interesting thing is, it used to take us 3 months to do this piece of analysis. So I'll put a team on the ground, we'll get data, we'll go interview across different markets, and it'll take us 3 months. It took us 3 weeks now with AI, the power of AI, right? We built an agent. The agent, went in a week, and less than a week actually got us the data, and the rest was actually cleaning up the data, right? So again, as we think about efficiency, we know the economists here talked about how we need to drive productivity. For me, this was also a case of power of AI. So 370 business champions. Hopefully we're going to see more next year. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Acha. Brilliant work. Thank you. Can I shake your hand? See, I didn't forget you this time. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, when we're talking about scaling up, it's happening. So unbelievable to see the numbers and how we can build on those. I'd like to now welcome Jean-Pascal Tekwa, Chairman of Schneider Electric, James Mwangi, CEO of Equity Group Holdings, Gagan Gupta, founder of Arise, come take a seat, and Jeremy Awori from EcoBank. You guys are scared to sit next to me, I see. You're going to sit. Fantastic, gentlemen. Great to have you with us. I mean, listening to that data and what Achaleke and his team have put together, it's really showing that we're seeing scaling up happening in real time. And I wonder how you envisage momentum in the next year, given the current global economic realities that we're facing right now. James, I want to start off with you.
Yeah, I think that data is reflecting the realities, and I believe it is informed by 2 basic things. The first one is the global shift, where the world is reorganizing, is resetting, and Africa is increasingly becoming more relevant. More relevant because it is playing an increasing role as it converts its raw materials into finished products. We used to export raw materials. We have increasingly starting to add value, and that is where that growth and valuation and revenue is coming from. The second one is the use of technology. Africa is leapfrogging on technology, and the last comment by the presenter that AI has helped him to change from making this presentation in 3 months to 3 weeks is happening in organizations. We're becoming more efficient. We're able to be precise in decisions. And lastly is the realization that scale is important for all the reasons Asha told us. And that, for instance, in banking, the realization that a standalone bank doesn't have a future because of cost of compliance, cost of risk, and the issue of collapsing high margin models to volume models. Those, to me, are the big drivers. And of course, change. Generation that is now particularly driving family businesses are not the first generation. They are second and third generation. And if you look at the third generation, most of those families have educated their children in the best schools. They have opened them to global networks. And so their thinking is very different because they have been socialized differently.
So, it's interesting because the financial sector must be tough in many ways, because when you go cross-border, I mean, you're dealing with a whole bunch of different rules and regulations. I mean, you guys have very strict fiduciary rules and various other rules. So, Jeremy, I want to bring you in here, and I want you to give me a sense of, when we talk about scale, how easy is it to achieve it in the financial sector when it's not homogeneous across the continent regulation-wise?
It is a challenge. I mean, EcoBank is in 34 countries. We have multiple regulators, multiple regulations. And when we look at rolling out, we have to comply with each of those. And each regulator wants to make sure that you do so. And this is something as a continent we have to sort out, because we need to leverage the scale of the continent to the benefit of each individual country and each individual customer. So we need to simplify that complexity by harmonization of regulations, guidelines, for example, use of data centers, data privacy, data storage. All of those things need to align in terms of infrastructure if we're to get the benefits of that scale. And it is very, very complex. And we are using AI to make sure we can comply.
So you're using AI to see if you can comply?
We have to make sure we do that.
Yeah.
So if you talk about financial transactions, banks have a duty of care to make sure that there's no money laundering happening, or we minimize it. So you can't do that.
But is it like vastly different across all jurisdictions?
No, there's more harmonization now. But
Yeah.
there still are differences.
All right. I want to bring in Gagan as well. I mean, you've got an incredible personal story, and you saw opportunity where, a large multinational said, we've got to close up shop. You've got various verticals in your business, and it includes the economic free zones. You're focused on mineral processing. You've got Spiro bikes. Give me a sense of scaling, because you're in 20 African countries right now. So how close to governments do you need to be able to expand and scale?
So I think fundamentally, when you look at all these three businesses, there's one thing common, that we want to ensure we transform in the continent and we produce in the continent. And what started as a first journey in a country in Gabon, because Gabon used to export round logs, and we said we have to transform. And we set up the industrial zone. The transformation was very successful. And I think what we did was also ensure that the government has a very important stake in it. So it was a public-private partnership, 60% us, 40% government, quite successful. And that actually became the model for every government to copy. I think my belief is, in Africa, a lot of times, the battle is in the mind, that 90% of the people think they're doing the mental battle. That's not possible. And what we do is we show it as possible. Once we have shown in one country it is possible, all the countries want to replicate. And therefore, my experience has been that you have 3 or 4 success stories, and then all the governments are happy to support. And so from a government perspective, I think one thing that we have done very well is very strong partnership. When I say strong partnership, not 5-10% stake, but 30-40% stake with the government. So they have big stake with us. Secondly, when you talk of separate, say, mineral metal processing or Spiro, they actually help in the transformation journey what we started. So if you think of Spiro, I think this is going to be the biggest, next 5 years is going to be the biggest energy transition journey in Africa. I mean, you're going to go from, I've seen in China, they've gone from literally in early 2010, 0% electric motorcycles to about 100% now. And in Shanghai, if you want to own a ICE car, which is the fuel car, it's a luxury, because you have to pay about $20,000 as the fees for having a plate. And so that is going to happen in Africa, because how many governments will subsidize fuel? Yeah. How many governments will subsidize foreign exchange? So when we set up the Spiro, it's going to drive a very different industry in terms of cell manufacturing, battery manufacturing. And I mean, everybody has been talking about let's do manufacturing. But what we do is we create the demand for people to come and manufacture. And therefore that allows us to scale it very differently.
Yeah.
And I think similar something in metal processing. I mean, Africa has been exporting raw material for ages. I mean, if you think of it, 85% of the bauxite gets shipped from Guinea, 60-70% of manganese gets shipped from Africa. But nobody has made an attempt to transform. Gabon government came with a policy. We are the first ones to do it. In September, we'll have the smelter live and running. So I think for us, fundamental is how do you transform the continent, and that drives the entire ecosystem.
It's a brilliant, a brilliant way of thinking. And also, I mean, I find about engines in more mature markets, we are very far away from that because we need the big stuff. We need electricity. We need base load. We need, to think about all the big infrastructure so that businesses can frankly thrive and scale. So the Schneider Group, I guess, has some solutions in your pocket, I believe. A company that's been around since the 1800s. Really interesting. And when you look at the African context, I wonder how you would view the point that we're in right now and the kind of investment that we still need on those specific industries.
Yeah, so, well, you reminded that the company was created in 1836, and to dissipate any doubt, I was not the founder of the company, right? But we've been here in Africa for 30 years. Actually, I was living in Africa. We created a lot of offices, and they have thrived and developed and everything. So, and we are very committed to the continent. So I had already the opportunity to express myself on scaling yesterday on stage. And I would briefly repeat that energy is the foundation of every scaling. If you don't have energy, you have nothing possible, right? In urbanization, in industry, in digitization. And of course, we work every day on that. But then I see two things as strategic on acceleration factors. Number one is digitization on AI. And you can't do at all AI without energy. And the second one is industrial localization. We need to produce locally here. And when I think about scaling, I think the most important thing is a change of model. The sort of traditional thinking about Africa was land big projects and you do everything. We've never done that at Schneider. We were partners and we are partners. Of course, we still do large projects. We do smart grid in Egypt, smart grid in Senegal. We are working with the largest refineries. We do data centers, everything. But when I look at what we do as a business today, 70% is done with the vibrant forces of small and medium enterprises, supplying the key technologies so that people can build a business on the top of it. They build different applications, they build innovation, they build it at scale, and we supply them with drawings, IP, and everything so that they can start it, but they bring 90% of the value on the top of what we do. And I see that as the most important thing as we go forward. Find those complementarities so that you bring what you are excellent at, and people who know the field, who have brilliant ideas, can develop on the top of it. And that's true with electrical products, with control systems, and with digital twin and software.
James, one of the big things that also just emanated from these conversations is trust. And in the financial industry, you need a truckload of trust. And it comes with regulation, and it comes with, being very precise on what you do. Given you've got such a strong footprint, when you're looking at partnerships, how often does the trust issue come up, and how do you solve it?
It's true. Equity has been built on a platform of partnerships and collaborations. If you look at our shareholding, it's purely a platform of partnerships and collaborations. When you look at the partners who enable us, we don't own most of the things, who enable us. And broadly, what we look at is your track record. What is your track record? What is your brand? You may have the best technology on earth, but if your reputation is not good enough, then we don't risk with you. Because in the fullness of time, something will give way. So we really look at, if it was human beings, we would talk about character, but for companies, we talk about brand and reputation. What is the verified reputation? What is the track record of delivery? What is the track record of performance? So it's not, it's you do a thorough due diligence. And if you look at equity shareholding, the top shareholder is the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. The second shareholder is the IFC, the World Bank Group, and on and on and on. So you really then get the credibility. What people would say, birds of the same feather flock together. You must ensure that you are studying and trust asset is not lowered by who you associate with. And it also goes through to the same with the staff. And that's why you find equity does conduct audits on its staff, because the behavior of a staff can erode the brand of an organization.
So I'm interested in terms of your shareholders, to what extent have you seen, apart from the IFC, but African sovereign wealth funds investing and partnerships, African businesses, African stakeholders investing? Is that coming up?
It's early days.
Early days?
So
you've seen more interest from foreign institutions than what you've seen from African institutions?
Ideally, what the challenge was that we didn't focus initially on mobilization of local resources. We believed there was a shortage, what was not correct. If you look at Africa, we have between $2 and $4 trillion of funds. But unfortunately, there are no aggregators of those funds. There are no vehicles that we had built with the trust that could then be able to distribute those funds. That is where the problem arose from day one. But the rest of the world was organized better than us. They had pulled their resources together. And that is why they have been able to take the best opportunities. Lastly, we have had the problem of partnerships and collaborations with public sector and private sector. Initially, there was always suspicion between the public sector and private sector, and that is caused the biggest problem with us.
So the suspicion.
The suspicion.
Yeah.
And,
do you resonate with that, CEOs in the room? Yes, no? Suspicion, lack of trust between public and private sector? You can raise your hands. Interesting.
That has been a big problem. If you look at most countries, they work together, the private sector. Essentially, it's only now that we have proved, and I'm glad that I was the main driver of that agenda globally, of private sector-led development. Our countries have always had headroom in terms of what revenue they get, what tax cedings they have, and the ability of the citizens to pay tax. And we said, look at it, globally, the listed companies have a market cap which is 136% higher than the GDPs of all the countries put together.
Wow.
But that capital was not being given an opportunity to contribute. Yet the government, particularly recently, you could see the debt GDP ratios don't allow any more borrowing. No more borrowing, no taxes, and that is what has made it easier than to say, create space for partnership between private sector and public, and let private sector be the driver of development financing.
Jerry, do you resonate with that? What's your experience been?
No, absolutely. We've talked in this session and other sessions about, as you say, the perception gap. There's the perception gap from outside investors in. From a private sector perspective, it's also around coordination and just seeing where we need to focus. So I can absolutely relate to this. But maybe to pivot, if we want to have private sector-led development, we need public or semi-public institutions to be able to invest. So where you started from around sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, the banking system in Africa needs much more capital than it has today. And why is that important? Of course, we're in the financial system. That capital is multiplied in terms of lending into the private sector, and that's what develops economies. We are financing SMEs. We've heard about the number of unicorns, and those above $1 billion. If you don't have big, strong financial institutions, you cannot finance those companies that have revenues over $1 billion. It's just not possible. So we need this private sector-led drive because it's efficient, they understand the markets. Public sector have to come in and do what they need to do. And I believe we will definitely see what we need to, but it's a whole ecosystem. I say we need to cooperate, we need to collaborate, and we need to integrate, and every player has to play their part within the system for it to work.
So I'm going to end off with this question. I'm going to ask all of you to answer it. If you had $1 billion right now to help industrialize the continent, Gagan, what would you do with it?
So I think before I answer that question, I'll just say that our story is very different in the sense our entire cap table is African. So we don't have any non-African shareholder. I mean, now we just got about a couple of months back, but the entire journey of Arise from 2010 till has been an African story. African capital, so my point is you can mobilize African capital. All our partners are public pension funds, or local capital. So that has been completely, our entire debt book has been local debt book. It is not foreign capital. So I think the only point I want to say is Arise is an African story supported by AFC, AfriExim, likes of EcoBank, likes of regional banks that have helped with this company. Coming to your point, if I had $1 billion, I will put in two sectors. I'll put in textile, because I think Africa imports $40 billion of textile, and that's like sending, 5 million jobs outside. So that just we can ensure we do import replacement. Secondly, I'll put in new energy infrastructure, because I think we're just sending too much subsidy and too much fuel. So we just spend in these two sectors to really, put these two sectors on steroids.
James, $1 billion. I'm giving you $1 billion. What are you going to do?
I think I could share the money into three areas. The first one is energy and computing power of data centers. That will enable then the second layer, which is digital public infrastructure. And the two combined would then create a great opportunity and convert the demographic of Africa into demographic dividend.
Jean-Pascal.
Can you give me first the 1 billion?
You have to give me a business plan so I can see if it's bankable, and then I'll give you $1 billion. Don't you know how it works?
I spent 2 words listening to too many words now, time for action, so I want to see the money.
Would the IFC just give you money before you give a plan? No.
Right, no surprise. I would do what James said. I would put 1/3 in energy. I would put 1/3 in digitization, data centers on AI. I would put 1/3 that I would finance entrepreneurs to develop their business on that base.
Fantastic. Jerry?
Yeah. I think we're very much aligned. It's around energy and power, also 1/3. Data center and digital infrastructure is the other 1/3. And then the other 1/3 into people and skills, right? And that's the entrepreneurs who will build this continent and build our economies.
But let me guess, $1 billion is doable. It is there. The money exists. Right? We've just said that. The money exists on the continent. We just aren't able to tap into it. So I hope at some point, with these ideas, are you working on trying to get this patient capital, Gagan?
So I think we are very focused on textile, and we have in Benin we have about 40,000 in capacity. Our intention is before end of 2029, we would have textile plants in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Cameroon, and combined we are looking at replacing at least $10 billion of imports. So I'm very confident that we should be able to do it. Similarly, on the new energy infrastructure side, I think we talked about it. We expect that we should be able to at least have close to 1 gigawatt of new energy infrastructure powering on mobility. And my belief is that, a lot of times we say there's no energy. I think the issue is there's no use case which can pay for that energy in a bankable PPA. The moment you have a bankable PPA, you have a demand, then automatically you can get enough people to come and put the money in that sector.
Fantastic. I hope in the next year, before the next forum, are you ready to spend $1 billion? Last word.
I'm pretty certain between us here, in the next 1 to 2 years, we will spend that billion.
You'll spend, no, but you see, I gave you $1 billion each. Think bigger, scale or fail.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to find a way.
It's the usual story. You propose to give us $1 billion, and then you ask for 1 billion each, right?
It's $1 billion each. Spread the love. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for our fantastic panelists. What a fantastic way to end the Africa CEO Forum 2026 edition. Gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been great to have you. Thank you. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I know that you're dying to go and start your Friday evening. On that note, I'm just going to say a few words in terms of the major outcomes that we've sort of heard over the last 2 days. And a couple of things that stuck out to our teams here is the quote from President Bryce Ngwema saying, "Economic alliances are instruments of power." The other very important quote I want to leave you with from the CEO of the Rwanda Development Board: "Scale will not be achieved by governments, businesses or investors acting in isolation, but through shared responsibility, shared risk and shared execution." And that is such an important quote because we've heard so much of this. We cannot do it alone. It has to be collaboration, and we have to see trust being built across various stakeholders. So on that important note, ladies and gentlemen, I want to wish you well. I'd also like to invite you to a cocktail in the exhibition hall, and I'm sure you have a lot going on and planned for the weekend. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
televiziyo y'u Rwanda mwabyumvise yuko muri iyi nama ya Africa CEO Forum haberamo ibikorwa bitandukanye, ibiganiro bitandukanye, abashoramari baganira n'abayobozi bakuru b'ibihugu. Mwumvise byinshi. Inama isoje yo yegaruka cyane cyane ku buryo abanyafrika bagira uruhare mu gukomeza kuzamura uyu mugabane mu gukora ibikorwa bitandukanye by'iterambere. Harimo amabanki, harimo ibigo by'ubucuruzi, harimo abantu benshi batandukanye b'ingeri zose bafite aho bahuriye no guteza imbere uyu mugabane wa Afrika. Ni inama igeze ku musozo yitewe n'abantu basaga 2,800, imaze iminsi iri kuva 14 kugera umunsi 15. Ubu kuri aya masaha nibwo igeze ku musozo. Iki mwakurikiraga cyari ikiganiro cyayo cyanyuma. Niyo nama nini ko hano, niyo nama nini nkuru hano muri Afrika kubijyanye n'ishoramari kugeza ubu ngubu aho bigeze. Ibisigaye abagiye bafata amanimero y'abandi, abagiye bafata ama email y'abandi, bari inama yo guconnectinga mu cyongereza ko bita cyangwa se gusangira ubunararibonye, gusangira ibitekerezo. Uwumvise igitekerezo cya mugenzi we kimukoze ku mutima, nawe aragenda akajya kukibyaza umusaruro, akamuganiriza, bakajya bavugana. Murabizi ko ibyitwa business networking cyangwa se ibyitwa guhuza ibitekerezo kw'abanyabukungu bibyara umusaruro ufatika. Ni inama yitabiriwe n'abakuru b'ibihugu bagera kuri 6 barimo kwa Perezida wa Repubulika y'u Rwanda Paul Kagame n'abandi bashyitsi. Murabyumva, aba CEO cyangwa se abayobozi b'ibigo binini cyane ku rwego rw'isi, ku rwego rwa Afrika basaga 1000. Hanyuma ibigo by'itangazamakuru na RBA irimo bisaga 300. Urumva ko ari inama nini cyane. Haje kandi ibigo kandi by'ishoramari cyangwa se financial institutions bigera kuri 70 n'abayobozi babyo bakuru. Hanyuma ibyo binavuze 1000 n'abayobozi b'ibigo byigenga ku mugabane wa Afrika ku isi. Ni inama yitabirwa n'abantu batutse mu bihugu bisaga 90. Ni inama ngari cyane. Hanyuma rero RBA yarababereye, yabanye namwe. Nizeye neza yuko mwungutse byinshi kandi murabona ko u Rwanda rugana kuba igicumbi cy'ishoramari, igicumbi cy'inama. Hanyuma murakomeza mubane natwe mu biganiro byacu bitandukanye. Turabashimira ko mukomeza kuba natwe kandi mukomeza kudukunda. Njye wabanye namwe kuri uyu mugoroba dusoza iyi nama ya Africa CEO Forum. Nitwa Gatete Eric Rafiki. Murakomeza mugirire byiza, mugumane natwe kuri gahunda zitandukanye za televiziyo Rwanda.